Welcome to the Alembic. Our topic today is behaviors of a yogi leader. All of us are familiar with maturity models, whether it's a process maturity model or a capability maturity model. Organizations and people use this tool to assess how well they perform in any given area. And these models generally have multiple levels, and each level is measured by or validated by a set of defined behaviors or expectations from an organization, which helps identify their level of maturity in that area. Earlier we discussed how the process of yoga is defined as a series of steps, and as you go up the steps, your practice of yoga and your application of the principles and tools in your life becomes more mature. So in a way, that is also a maturity model. We can call it a leadership maturity model. Beginning with the first step of attaining equanimity in intellect and moving on to disciplined practice, and then on to manifested empowerment, and finally the state or step of singularness. This is how the journey and the maturity of our yogic practice in applying those principles to our personal and work life can be demonstrated or can be measured. So how do we actually measure? How do we assess where we stand? One obvious way is to look at behaviors based on the discipline of yoga. We began with the first step as equanimity in intellect. Let's try and understand what that means. Intellect is defined as the faculty of reasoning and understanding objectively. So this is the faculty we use to make our decisions, small ones and big ones. This is the faculty that drives our behavior, drives how we act, how we think, and to some extent how we feel. So equanimity in that faculty or equilibrium in that faculty implies that we take a balanced view to everything, and hence the outcomes of our decisions, actions and behavior is balanced. So let's look at some of the behaviors that one would exhibit when applying equanimity in intellect. We defined three parameters here. First one being self-awareness. So what behaviors can we expect from someone who is practicing self-awareness? Here's a small list to begin with. Decides knowing own strengths and vulnerabilities, which means whenever you make a decision, you consider your strengths and your vulnerabilities. We earlier talked about this constant conflict between our strengths and vulnerabilities, and the goal of yoga being to reinforce our strengths so we can resolve our vulnerabilities. So having self-awareness means we are constantly looking at that equilibrium and making decisions based on the best mix that would achieve the goals we want. Displaying awareness of your mental emotional state. A self-aware person always knows how they are feeling and what they are thinking, what is driving their thought process in that moment. Consequently, when you are interacting with another person, your behavior towards that other person, and when you are alone planning the direction of your thoughts, in both these cases, your awareness of what's going on inside your mind and how your feelings and thoughts are affecting how you react to a given situation, to a given problem, to a given circumstance, is a function of how much in equilibrium your intellect is. Constantly looking out for your own conditioned behavior. So, a self aware person is keenly aware of the things that they do without thinking, the responses, the reflexes, the habits that they have, which show up and have an effect on their decision making and their interactions unannounced, without planning. So, the outcomes can be unplanned and not helpful. Self aware people, being aware of their conditioning, their habits and reflexes, are on the lookout, and when they see something like that happening, will stop that in its tracks and make sure that they bring their intellect into equilibrium so that they can get the maximal outcome from whatever they are doing in that moment. Acting purposefully and with deliberation. So, a self aware person will not begin working on anything important or anything unless they know why they are doing it and are clear about their intent. And once they do, then every action they take is deliberate. It is not just a matter of habit, it is planned. And self aware people generally have a healthy disposition. That's because they are mindful of how they conduct themselves, not just what they eat, their exercise, their lifestyle, but even when they are engrossed in something, making sure they take proper breaks, making sure their physical health, their physiological health, their behavior is moderated throughout the day so that they remain in health with high levels of energy and perform to the highest levels of their standards. The second aspect we mentioned was enhanced cognition. So, what are the behaviors that demonstrate someone who has enhanced cognition? Being a quick study and grasping complex situations easily. That's because you have the ability of undistracted attention and focus, so you are able to process more information in less time. Being seen as intellectually sharp and agile, that's just a perception that follows you around. Liking to think things through before concluding. So, someone who has enhanced cognition will not make decisions, will not arrive at conclusions without fully being satisfied that they've looked at all sides. That's because they can look at more sides, they can see more of the same situation in the same time as other people. Presenting ideas clearly and with conviction. Again, when your cognition is enhanced, when you have mental alacrity, you have clarity about what you are thinking and why you are thinking. Hence, you are able to present your ideas clearly, unambiguously, and in terms that anyone can understand. And thus, you speak with conviction. You don't carry doubt about what you are thinking. And finally, being not easily distracted. Someone with enhanced cognition has the ability to ignore and quiet all the noise that goes on inside our minds, comes from our feelings and emotions, and even our physical health and physiology in a given situation, in a given moment. Knowing how you can shut all that noise down and focus on the task at hand is a faculty that you develop as you enhance your cognitive capabilities. And the discipline of yoga provides tools and techniques to do just that. The third aspect of equanimity in intellect we see is emotional intelligence. The behaviors of an emotionally intelligent people are consideration of others' mental emotional state. It is the ability to understand how others feel, where they are coming from, and get a better sense, a deeper understanding of their point of view so that you can relate to them better. Being able to neutralize charged and toxic situations. That is a very important skill that is demonstrated by individuals who have high emotional intelligence. And that implies in a given situation, when you have multiple points of view, when you have conflict, an emotionally intelligent person will know how to deal with, how to react, how to respond to someone who is not in a very productive mental emotional state, to diffuse the situation so that it becomes productive. Having a rich emotional vocabulary, that's an interesting one. Most of us have difficulty expressing our emotions. Most often we give bland answers when somebody asks us how we are doing. The response one sees too often is good, I'm good, which really tells us nothing about your emotional state. People who are emotionally intelligent have the ability to measure how well or how badly they are feeling. For instance, let's look at this picture. I call it the emotional coaster. All through the day, we go through emotional highs and lows, and there are lower lows and higher highs. So, a self-aware person who is emotionally intelligent can actually measure where they are on this continuum so that they can adjust their thinking and their responses accordingly to ensure good outcomes. Admitting mistakes quickly and learning from them. That's a straightforward one to measure. Is difficult to offend. Some people take offense at pretty much anything. And the other end of the spectrum are people who literally never get offended. The degree and the duration of how long someone gets and remains offended is a good measure of lack of emotional intelligence on their part. So this describes the behavior one can expect from someone who is at the first step of this maturity model that we introduced earlier.